Howdy, fellow Vine Trippers. I wanted to take just a moment before the show starts to let you know about a great website called Texas Wine Lover. They can be found at txwinelover.com. And they have a comprehensive website that can become your go-to site for information on Texas wines, winemakers, and the wineries that can be found in this state. They even have a phone app that you can download, and that will help you plan your route to create your own wine trip. So make sure and check them out at txwinelover.com. Welcome to Texas Under Vine, an exploratory podcast to scout out the best that Texas wine country has to offer. I'm your wine guide, Scott, and I'm here to lead you on an auditory expedition to the vineyards and wineries across the great Lone Star State. Each episode will cover a different vineyard, winery, or wine-related business operating in Texas. You'll hear interviews, descriptions, and details about each location that will excite you to visit and experience them for yourself. Ready to plan a wine tour? Use these episodes to choose the most interesting spots for you and your friends to check out. Most of all, enjoy hearing about the rapidly growing wine industry in the state and what makes our wines and wineries the best. Howdy, fellow Vine Tripper, and welcome to episode 24 for Texas Under Vine. I'm excited today to tell you about a relatively newer winery located in High, Texas. One of the cool things about this particular winery is they also do distilling. So this winery is called Horn Winery, and their distilling branch is called AZO Distilling. Now, in addition to making their own great wines here at Horn, they also have a custom crush business on site that helps out many other Texas wineries get their wines made and bottled. For those that don't know what custom crush means, it just means that a lot of wineries, when they're getting started especially, don't have all of the expensive equipment to crush all the grapes, to press the wines, to ferment, the barrel storage, the bottling line, all that kind of stuff. And so some wineries who do have all that equipment will kind of rent out or help out these smaller wineries by using their equipment to help make their wines that they will sell in their own tasting room. So that's one of the things that Horn Winery does. They have a lot of equipment and a lot of things there to help out other Texas wineries make their own wines and get those bottled. So everything there at the winery has musical themes, from the names of the wines to all of the decor. It actually took me a couple of visits before I even noticed there's a keyboard on the ceiling of the tasting room. You'll have to look for that when you go visit. So Brad, their winemaker, actually got his start by working at another winery here in Central Texas called Wedding Oak Winery. Their tasting room manager, Robin, came from the hospitality industry, and she loves taking care of the customers that come to check out Horn Winery. The winery itself was opened in 2018 and is actually a sister company to another company, the Vintner Vault, which is located in Paso Robles, California. It's owned by Ryan Horn. And the Vintner's Vault operation specializes in selling equipment used in wine production. So they actually have a whole building right next to the tasting room that is Vintner's Vault, where they have their wine production facilities that they sell and things like that. Their distillery there is called AZO Distilling and has a similar branch there in California owned by Ryan. Although most of the spirits made there at the distillery there in High are all done in-house here in Texas. They source most of the grapes that they make for their wines from the Texas High Plains area, but some are from Central Texas as well. When you go in for a tasting, they keep the musical theme by naming their tasting flights after musical terms. So like a brass tasting would be all white wines as the tasting, and an all red tasting would be called a baritone, and a mixed flight is called, and I love this, a symphony. So their tasting room has big windows directly into this production facility, so you can actually see where the magic happens while you're sipping on your tasty wine. Now, when I was there, I was able to sit down and talk with their head winemaker, Brad Cummins, and during that interview, their tasting room manager, Robin Johnson, was also able to join in for some of it. Let's hear directly from them. So I'm here with Brad and with Robin at Horn Winery. So first off, tell me just a little bit about yourself. What got you into the wine industry?
So for me, it's actually kind of a funny story. So for context, Horn Winery, all of our decor and our wines are all music themed. Prior to me getting into the industry, I used to be an audio engineer up in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. So like live sound, studio post-production, even worked with a Grammy winner or two while I was up there. Life threw me a curveball and I moved back to my hometown of San Saba. And if you've ever been to San Saba, it's one of those towns where everyone knows everyone because everyone's somehow related to everyone. Mostly it's by church affiliation or by marriage. Sometimes it's blood, but yeah, everyone knows everyone. And there's a winery up there called Wedding Oak Winery. And Mike McHenry, the owner, his family and my family went to the same church. So I moved back to San Saba, tried to get my ducks in a row. There's nothing music related over there outside of church gigs, and they just want volunteers. So I was like, all right, I guess I have to find an actual job. And I'm not exaggerating on this. The day I was going to go to Wedding Oak and ask if they had a position, Mike goes into one of the banks where my mom works. And she says, hey, Brad's back in town. He's looking for a job. Yeah, send him on over. And I had done retail for 3.5 years in the music field. And I'm thinking, all right, I could probably BS my way through some wine sales without knowing anything. And instead, they threw me back into the cellar to start making wine. And I did that in 2017. I helped them with the harvest. Left for a couple months because I thought, all right, it's just going to be a little part-time gig. It's not anything I was really interested in. Fast forward to February of 2018. That's whenever I went back. They had just hired a new assistant winemaker, and it was just him in the cellar. And so they hired me back on to help him out. And that was in 2018, February 2018. And I was there all the way through the end of 2020 because that's where I officially got the wine bug bit.
Awesome. And I was actually in more of the bar restaurant scene through college, graduated college, got an office job, then went back to the bar scene because managing all that stuff. Then COVID hit and obviously didn't have a job. We were all closed down. So I ended up eventually working at a resort, managing the bar at the resort. Was kind of over it. And I love drinking wine. I didn't know much about the whole process of it, but love drinking wine. Just kind of responded to a help wanted, I guess, ish ad and met Melissa and Ryan, and we just really clicked. And so came into this business. It's been 2 years now for me. Loved them so much. And then I really learned just so much about the whole process of, from start to finish of wine. And Brad's really helped me, learn a lot in that aspect. We do also distill. So that's cool as well to kind of learn the whole start to finish process. So yeah, it's just been for me a big learning experience as far as the industry goes. The whole management of it wasn't the hard part for me. It was more of the, okay, how does this all work kind of thing? I'll pop bottle any day, but how does it work? How is it made, from the vineyard all the way down to the labeling process, which has been really cool to learn that whole experience. So yeah, I love it. I love working in this industry now. And there's just some really cool people as well that they just do love to share all the information, which makes it really fun. So yeah, it's great learning experience for me to know how the bottles I drink are made. I love it. Love it so much. So
you knew the lines. You just had to figure out how to fill in the colors.
Exactly. Had the picture, just needed to know, what went where kind of thing. So yeah, I love it. I do love it.
Well, tell me a little bit about this location's history. How did it get started? And
so we got started back in 2018 is whenever the winery officially started. We are kind of a sister branch company from the Vintner Vault, which Ryan Horn started in Paso Robles back in 2011, 2010.
2011.
Somewhere in that time frame. So his background is he actually started his wine career at Justin in Paso. So Justin Sauv Blanc is like the big one you see all over the place. And he started off as just a regular cellar person and worked his way up to be an assistant winemaker. And Ryan is a gearhead. He loves technology. He loves tinkering with mechanics. And so at some point he decided, I want to start my own business for all the equipment in the industry. And thus the Vintner Vault was started. fast forward, fast forward about 7-8 years, he has 2 locations in California. He's doing a lot of business out here in Texas. So he sets up a location here in Texas Hill Country, and their building is right next to ours. He actually had someone pretty much say, hey, if you're going to do this, you might as well go ahead and have your own winery, and it can be multifunctional. So he built this facility. He built this facility with the intent of it being a functioning showroom and a functioning winery. So when you walk in, we have these huge windows that look over into the cellar, and it's just nothing but tanks, which are obviously all tanks that you can get through the vintner vault. And the distillery side of things, he actually has a distillery out in California under the same brand. And the history behind that is he went to, I think it was Hungary, and learned how they made spirits and kind of the process on that. And he wanted to showcase, hey, you can make really, really great smooth spirits of any type or style here. And so here in the Horn Winery location, we do have our own little distillery with our own 500-liter copper pot still. And we're making a lot of our spirits here on site too.
Okay.
So it's kind of a nice little all-in-one stop shop.
Okay. So then you are working at Wedding Oak. Going back to your story, fill me in more on the details of becoming here.
So there was a couple of different things of it. So like I said, with my initial story, when I started at Wedding Oak, I thought it was just going to be a job. Whenever I went back for my second tenure, their then assistant winemaker, Seth Urbanek, he didn't just tell me what to do in the cellar. He wasn't just giving me orders and, basically treating me like an Oompa Loompa and saying, all right, go clean tanks, go move the wine, get the stuff filtered. We're going to bottle next week. It was none of that. It's like, hey, we're doing this, and this is why we're doing it. So he has a master's degree in food chemistry, or wine chemistry, I'm sorry, from Cornell. So he's very intricate on that kind of stuff. And for me, with the only wine experience or knowledge I had was Barefoot Yellowtail and Arbor Mist. It was like, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. So he eventually just taught me over my tenure there of why we did what we did. So instead of me just being, the grunt in the cellar, we were making educated decisions together on wine blends, processes, things like that. Fast forward to the end of 2020, we kind of all agreed, Seth, myself, and Mike McHenry, that it was probably about time for me to move on out of Wedding Oak for a couple different reasons. I actually got a job over at Becker Vineyards as a cellar hand over there. I was there from the beginning of 21, from I think it was like early January 21 through the end of March. Because sometime in March is whenever Seth, the guy's basically been my saving grace in this industry. He stopped by Vintner Vault, saw Ryan was in town, and Ryan was saying, hey, I have a winemaker that's, leaving, and I don't have anyone to do anything here. Like, I don't know who to even talk to. So I threw my name into the hat, gave me a call and said, hey, there's a guy over here looking for a winemaker. You think you're interested? It's like, yeah, sure. And so he officially threw my name into the hat. And I came by, did an interview with Ryan, and took that job on. I've been here since April of 21.
Tell me the story behind the name of the winery, Horn Winery.
So as the name suggests, it is basically the family surname. And like I said, the core of the winery and the theme of everything is all music based. I did not know this until recently, but Ryan had initially wanted to do all the decor to be like taxidermy, like hunting. And it's funny because anytime I talk to customers, I jokingly tell people, yeah, we could have gone the hunting route and had like the antler chandelier and taxidermy galore here, made any sort of gunslinger, feel right at home. I found out recently that a friend of his, their daughter, had actually mentioned, why don't you make it music themed? Like, make yourself stand out. And so they picked up on the music thing. So it's all music based. All the wines, even if they're single varietal or blends, they all are named after a musical term. So aria, serenade, ensemble, accent, things like that. So if you're a music nerd, you feel right at home. And we get a lot of people that come in that are exactly like that. And if you're not, it's still fun because the terminology coincides with the description of the wine itself. We're not just randomly choosing.
And I like that. This is what sets you apart and makes you different.
Exactly. There's so many wineries that are Western themed, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is, a certain atmosphere that people love, and more power to them. But the only other winery that I can think of that has anything music themed is Beanham, and it's mostly just their logo. That's really about it. They're not really doing anything that is 100% music themed.
Yeah. So it's a wide open canvas for you too.
To an extent. The downside to it, and I ran into this issue this last year, was that because musical terminology, anyone can really use it for anything, whether it's like a special blend or a special release. And there's always so many terms you can use. So I have come across some issues where other wineries have already used some musical terms that I want to use. And it makes it a little bit more difficult for me because like, okay, do I go ahead and go for that name and run the risk of, having like some sort of civil suit or like receive a cease and desist? And so this last one I did my research prior, and sure enough, I found out like one of the big Napa wineries had a wine that was already called that. I'm thinking, all right, I'll do another version of that word. And sure enough, there's a winery called that word. It's like, okay, I'm just running out of options here. So regardless, I was able to kind of stick with my theme. I had to tweak it a little bit, but it worked out. I just know eventually I'm going to run out of names to choose from. I can always recycle, but it doesn't always work out that way.
What about the distilling, Ezio Distilling?
So with the distillery, for context, all those recipes that we do in the distillery, with one exception, are basically copies of what's being done out in California. With that being said, all of our products, with two exceptions, are made here in-house. And the two exceptions are vodkas that are being made out in California, and then they ship them over here to us. But the rums that we make are Spirit of Agaves, and we kind of make them in like a or in like a mezcal style. So we have just a straight up Blanco mezcal. We have another one that technically falls in the Reposado realm, but you look at it, it looks like an añejo. Those are all made in-house. Our brandies are all made in-house. We have a moonshine that is a grape base. It's pretty much like a grappa, just not nearly as high proof. That is also made in-house as well.
And how did you learn about making spirits and all of that on top of wine?
I was an annoying little POS. Whenever I got hired on, we had a distiller on site, and I was still trying to figure out the vibe of everything. I didn't have anyone working underneath me here, so there was a lot of me just kind of getting used to the flow of this area or of this building. And every now and then I'd go into the distillery where our distiller was working, and I just piqued his interest, I just asked him, what's the process? How can you tell, when it's good spirits, when it's bad spirits, when do you, separate the alcohols? And he basically just kind of explained it to me over 3-4 months. And at some point in 21, he eventually left. He's now a brewmaster here in the 290 Wine Trail area. And so whenever he left, I picked up those duties. And so far, it's worked out pretty well. If I have any questions, I can easily text him, give him a call. So nothing too concerning on that, but I basically just asked him every single type of question. I was like that annoying little 8-year-old kid. How does that work? Why do you do that? Why do you do that?
Tell me why.
Exactly. I know we got frustrated at one point, but it's like, I'm just going to try and make it easier for you someday, dude.
Where do you source your grapes?
So I'm currently sourcing most of my stuff from the High Plains. The 22 vintage, almost all of my stuff came from the High Plains with a little exception. I got some fruit from up in Lampasas County. So I'm still trying to get my winemaking program really established, because whenever I took on this position, there wasn't anything. Before I actually got any fruit in, I think the last harvest we actually did was in 2019. And my first year, I didn't even get to do a harvest, because by the time I got on board, all the fruit was already taken. I had no budget, and I was just kind of like, well, I'm here if anyone needs extra tank space or needs to use a press. And that was my saving grace to keep me sane that year. But this last year, I was able to get some stuff from the High Plains and a little bit from here in the Hill Country. This year, it's still going to be kind of a mix between Hill Country and High Plains. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what we want to do here.
Do you have any estate vines or plan to have any estate vines?
No, we don't. We have the land for it, but we just don't really have the resources to really get it like up and established. We have a bunch of different plans that we're considering to do on the property. And like we've talked about doing like little B&B type cabins on site. We've talked about doing a little bit of a garden that extends on the backside of the property. I think we need to expand the building a little bit more because I'm running out of room in here. But it's still up in the air. The one thing I know is that Ryan doesn't want to do any sort of vines because it's just a lot of time and effort and very, very little ROI.
There's a whole lot that goes into the viticulture versus the enology side of things. So it's a whole nother animal. I get you.
Yeah, and I'm barely surviving on the enological side of things.
So do you process all those grapes here on site?
Yes, we do. The only exception would be any whites we get from the high plains. Obviously, we don't want a lot of skin contact. So this last year, I had one of my whites pressed off at the vineyard facility, and then I just got the juice and brought it back. But I did get, I'm trying to think, it was about 14 and a half tons of Muscat Canelli that got brought down as a machine-picked fruit. So got all of that done in-house. That was a little bit of a problem child. But it's turned out fairly nice as the end wine. But all my reds, I do everything here in-house.
So I know typically when you're getting stuff from High Plains or whatever, they're going to put the fruit in the big bins and everything and put them on trucks and bring them down. When they're transporting just the juice, does that like in one of those big tanker trucks? How do they bring just
Luckily
the juice? How do they
it was
transport it?
Yeah, so luckily for me, it was a small enough lot. It was only about 300 gallons, so I just got one of those big flex tank totes.
Oh, okay.
With a metal cage
Yep.
on the outside of
Okay,
it.
gotcha. I didn't even think about those.
Yeah, so it actually kind of worked out because I picked up the white and I had 2 red lots that I was still going to be getting from the vineyard, technically 3 or 4, but they didn't have enough fruit of the other 2. And so I made one big trip to go up there, drop off my bins, and go ahead and get my juice while I was there. And then whenever it was time for harvesting the reds, I just had to go up there with our truck and flatbed gooseneck, and they should already have all the fruit already harvested. They just throw it on the truck, give me the piece of paper, and on my way back I come.
Get back here as quick as you can. And y'all do a lot of custom crush for people as well here, for what I've heard.
Yes, we do. I'm not really making wine for other people as more so as I'm just facilitating them. So it's a couple of newer brands that just got started within the last 2 years here in Texas. Obviously, they don't want to dish out the money for a facility, so we've got to work it out to where obviously they're housing all their barrels here, some of their case goods. I'll help them do their bottling whenever they get anything from Texas for fruit processing. Obviously, I'll help them with that. Pretty easy. I got another one that we just picked up about 2 months ago, and they're wanting to do about 50 to 70 tons worth of production. So that's probably going to be my main focus on top of the small amount of production I'm going to get, but nothing too strenuous.
So from your own personal perspective, what are your favorite wines that you make?
I'll say this, out of the ones that I have personally made here, we have an Albarino that we just released back in April, and that one, since it was my first actual start to finish wine as a winemaker, I was very anxious about it, but the more I try it, it's definitely rounded out. It's really shown to be what Albarino can be like in Texas, so I'm really excited for that one. As far as what I have in barrel, man, that's a tough one. It's got to be my Hill Country Reds, because I got Mourvèdre and Sangiovese from Lampasas County, and the Mourvèdre is surprisingly dark. It's nice and smooth. It's very flavorful. The Sangiovese, I didn't do anything too crazy with these either, but the Sangiovese leans more super Tuscan without any sort of Cabernet added to it. So it's 100% Sangiovese, but it's super Tuscan Sangio. So I'm really excited to see what that one's going to be like as a finished wine.
So what are some of your most popular wines with customers? What are the ones you have a hard time keeping in stock?
Not so much that we have a difficult time keeping in stock. It's just when we look at our sales numbers every month, we can tell which one's definitely the most popular. On the white side, probably I'm going to include rosés on the white side as well. We have an orange muscat that's kind of on the off-dry side. It still has a decent amount of sweetness, but it's nowhere near as sweet as what the typical bridal parties that hit up 290 enjoy. But that one does fairly well. We also have a white Zen that one is any bridal parties, go-to wine. Those are both fairly popular. As far as like on the dry side, we have a Vermentino that's a little bit older in age, but that one still does fairly well, along with a dry Gruner Veltliner. Both of those are from 17 and 18 vintages, respectively. On the red side, we have a Bordeaux red blend that is a blend of Texas and California fruit. And it's 85% Cabernet, and it's a blend of Cab Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon equal parts, and then a little bit of Merlot. And that wine in particular definitely kind of falls into that Napa, big, bold, high tannins, high acid, high alcohol kind of realm. And people just absolutely love that wine. There's that, and then we also have a Reserve Tempranillo that a lot of people like.
Okay. So now I'm going to kind of direct a lot of attention more towards the location here. If somebody wanted to come check Horn Winery out. So what types of events or attractions or amenities do you provide here at the winery itself for people?
So we're currently going through a little bit of kind of a program change here at the winery because we are music themed. For the longest time, we were doing live music every other Saturday. We have since put that on hold because we're trying to kind of reinvent the winery experience for the time being. We're also wanting to somehow incorporate the distillery to be a little bit more exclusive. We just don't fully have a vision laid out for that just yet. I personally want the live music to be back because I know people just absolutely love it. The distillery, I think if we made that a little bit more exclusive, kind of like a speakeasy, that will definitely be fun. We have the ground to do different types of events. We're just still trying to figure out what really is going to work best for us.
So let's say a listener wanted to come in and do a tasting. They're going to check it out. Tell me a little bit about what the tastings look like. What are the fees involved? What types of wines do you typically do? Is it a flight of wines, or how does that work?
In the tasting rooms, we have curated flights on the winery side. So we have a all-white flight where we had some fun with this. We decided to call it the brass flight for all the whites, a baritone flight for all the reds, and then a symphony flight. And that's a mixed flight with 2 whites, a rosé, and then 2 reds. It's 5 wines per flight. It's $20 per tasting as well. However, we do have a little policy to where if you get 2 bottles of wine, we'll waive one of the tasting fees. So if it's you and say, party of 3, or you and 3 others, or if 2 of you end up getting 2 bottles of wine, bam, that's 2 tasting fees waived. And we do the same thing in the distillery. With the distillery, though, because we have 9 spirits to choose from, we just let customers pick and choose whichever ones they want. Obviously, we have to be a little bit more cautious pouring those. So by the end of it, ends up being about a shot worth of spirits. That, and with the TABC laws being the way they are here in Texas, we have to limit it to where it's 2 bottles per customer per month via TABC protocol. So if they at least get their 2 bottles, or if they get their 2 bottles, then the tasting fee is waived. So it makes it to where it's a little bit more enjoyable. It's not as much of an additional cost on top of buying products that you really, really enjoy. And for me, I'm really big in customer service. That was kind of one of my big things whenever I was in retail before I switched careers. And so if I can make it to where someone really enjoys their experience and they are happy with their purchases at the end of the day, we did our job right.
All right. So what about for tastings, reservations? Do they need reservations? Do you do walk-ins?
We do walk-ins all the time. If you want to do reservations, you can. It's not mandatory. It definitely helps us out, especially if it's a group larger than 6. We're pretty much a skeleton crew here. So on the weekends, we're typically 2 people working both tasting rooms, things like that. So any reservations would definitely help us just kind of have a head count and kind of prep. Not mandatory, but it does make it a little bit easier on our crew.
So what are your operating hours?
So our hours we're open Thursday through Sundays. Thursday and Sunday, we are open from 11 to 5. And then Friday and Saturday, we are open 11 to 6. If we're doing any sort of special events, obviously those hours would change, but that's kind of our staple hours. Now, with that being said, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm typically here. Those are my typical work days. Robin and our tasting crew aren't necessarily here, but I have an open door policy. So if customers just happen to show up, and I keep the front door unlocked. But I'm here, I'm working. If customers come in, I'm not going to say no. They're already here. They might as well go ahead and try some wine.
That's great customer service. What about kids, pets? Do you have any rules on any of those?
We're definitely pet friendly. I mean, we almost have to be if we have 3 dogs roaming around here on any given day. Kids, we're totally fine with them. The only thing we ask is because we are on a very large property. I think we're on 15 acres, I believe. If not, it's at least 12. Obviously, we just don't want the kids running around. But most of the way the facility is laid out, that's really not an issue. We actually have a couple of games we have set up outside. Like we'll have a cornhole or a horseshoe going on. So the kids can easily come by, but we're not going to be so strict to where if you're coming in with a stroller, we're going to say no at the door. It's like, as long as they're well managed. And for the most part, we never have any issues.
Food options. Do y'all provide food options? Can customers bring their own food?
Customers are more than welcome to bring their own food. We did have a charcuterie on site or charcuterie boards available. We stopped those because we were doing business with somebody else that was going to supply those, and that didn't necessarily work out how it was supposed to. We're in the process of getting a farm-to-table kitchen set up. And so we have a little garden on site that we just started this year. We're kind of testing the produce, seeing how well they grow. And we even have some chickens on site that Robin is slowly going crazy over. But we'll eventually have some fresh eggs, and we'll do, fresh sandwiches and salads, things like that. Nothing too heavy, but something that just kind of helps, coat the stomach a little bit, especially if you're hitting up 5 wineries in a day. We'll probably end up bringing back the charcuterie boards fairly soon, just so we have something.
Do you have any maximum group sizes?
No, not necessarily. If it's something that is going to be a little bit more catered to, obviously, the reservation thing would definitely matter, because then we can make sure that we're properly staffed. And with harvest season coming up, I'm most likely going to be here on the weekends regardless. But we actually do tour groups that are as large as 50 in-house. But what we end up doing is we'll actually bring them back into the cellar, and we do a little bit of a curated tasting for them. So they get to have fun. They get to see all the barrels, get to nerd out and see all the wines, tanks, and the press, which everyone calls Lucille Ball. But we don't really have a maximum size on any of the groups. Again, if it's a large group over 6, a reservation would definitely be nice. Not needed, but it just gives us a heads up, so that way we can make sure that the customer experience is as good as it can be, or not, if not better, just so there's no issues.
What are your busy and slow seasons? What's the best time to visit?
Pretty much any time of the year is a good time to visit us. The typical busy season, I would say, is probably from early mid-July through the end of October. At least in sales, because if you think about it, that's whenever a lot of people have already had their vacations, or they're finishing up college events or family trips, things like that, and they're wanting to have a last hoorah right before school starts back up or things like that. So July, August, we're fairly busy. September, October, you get a handful of people that just want to get away from all the school events if they can. With us being fairly close to Fredericksburg, we do get a handful of people coming over for Oktoberfest. And not everyone that comes over for Oktoberfest likes beer. So we end up getting a lot of traffic in here from those customers as well, especially with the distillery in-house. We're kind of able to double dip a little bit. So we get a lot of parties where, they're done with beer, but the husbands don't necessarily like wine, and the ladies don't necessarily want to have, heavy booze or anything. So it's a nice they can split off, do their own thing, and just have some fun.
Do you have a wine club or anything like that?
We do have a wine club. It's fairly simple at the moment. We have 2 different tiers. We have a 6-bottle membership and then a 12-bottle membership, and that's annual. We only do 2 shipments a year at the moment. We do one in mid-late spring, so about March, April, and then we do another one about mid-late fall, so around end of October, first part of November. And we'll typically have little hors d'oeuvres on side. Most of them are actually made by Robin because she loves to cook. And we do have a commercial kitchen on site already. So it's like, why not just go ahead and utilize that? We'll have live music. Obviously, the wines will be for sale and on discount. If we can plan it right, we'll actually have a couple of new releases for the spring membership, because that's whenever my 22 Red should be ready. But we're still fairly small. We're still trying to get our grounding. It has a lot of growing to do, but we'll get there.
Excellent. And then if somebody is interested, they think, at this point, they're thinking, I want to go check out Horn, taste some of their wine, see what things are like. But for whatever reason, they can't get out here. Do y'all do any kind of distribution? Do you sell on your website? Are there ways for people to be able to taste your wine without actually being here?
Yes. So at the moment, we don't do any sort of distribution, although that is something that we are looking into. It's just, making sure it's a proper route and all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. And that's something that the boss is actually organizing right now. As far as any sort of non-tasting room sales, we are all direct to consumer, but we do have an online website where you can place orders and we can ship. If you are out of the state of Texas, we just have to verify and make sure that we are legally allowed to ship to your state.
Do y'all have any plans for future growth?
We do. As I mentioned earlier, we're still trying to figure out what's the best avenue for us, especially with like the property size that we have and how we can truly utilize it, what we can do to grow the actual wine brand itself, or even just a custom crush side of things, even if it's just growing the type of spirits that we're producing. So we're still trying to figure that out. There's nothing fully set in stone, but we do have a couple of ideas and rough drafts. It's just eventually getting it really mapped out and getting the ball rolling on those.
So being, I would think, a young winery as you are, everything is growth at the moment as
exactly.
You're put in new programs and things.
Yeah, and just like with anything, it always comes down to how much financing can you put into some of those. Because me personally, I would love to be able to add like a gin to our spirits catalog. I mean, we might as well go ahead and do a handful of like cordials or liqueurs. Because one reason why we have all the different types of spirits was we had the idea of being a one-stop shop. So you can stop here, get your vodkas, get your whiskey, get your brandy, get your tequilas, and get all your base spirits for whatever kind of cocktail you want. We currently have a whiskey that we're working on at the moment. What really sets us apart on the distillery side is we do have a brandy that we make more in a bourbon style. So it's in heavy charred American oak barrels. So if I didn't tell you it was brandy, you taste it and you think it was bourbon. You're like, man, this is better than Garrison. It's not, but perspective is, always considered in that aspect. But, if I didn't tell you it was brandy, people literally think it's whiskey or it's bourbon. And it's like, no, it's actually brandy. It's made just from grape spirits. And so that's been a nice little supplement for us. But we'll eventually have our own whiskey. I would love to get a gin. I would love to be able to make our own vermouth in-house as well. Maybe a coffee liqueur, maybe like a blackened rum. Nothing too crazy, but just have a little bit more variety. So again, we can have that one-stop shop mentality.
Having your own spirits and everything here, do y'all do any kind of fortified wines, a port or anything like that?
We have a couple older ports that were made before the tasting room was officially open. I would love to be able to make like an actual like type of sherry, probably. Just because of what grows in Texas, it probably end up being more like a Rutherglen, like a Australian fortified Muscat. I would love to be able to do that. If I can get enough Tempranillo, maybe do like an actual Tempranillo port. So it just kind of depends. I got plenty of high proof spirit to do it. It's just, what grapes can I get in to actually do it? And these and certain cocktails. And at one point we even had a hard cider in-house, and we may pick that up again. So for us, the spirits are definitely a mentioning point for sure. On the wine side, the fact that we have wines that I feel kind of cater to any sort of wine drinker, whether you are the big, bold Napa Cab drinker, we got a wine for you. If you are super oaky, buttery Chardonnay, we have a wine for you. If you are more on the crisp, acidic white wine side, we have a wine for you. If you like just super sweet stuff, we have at least one wine for you. So we don't have as big of a selection as some other wineries do, but we have the basic styles that I think the average consumer or even the well experienced winemaker or wine drinker can enjoy. And with us, we don't really necessarily have a very specific style of wine that we are constantly having. So we are going to be incorporating a handful of new types of wines that we haven't done in the past. And so it's going to be fun. It's going to be ever evolving wine experience here.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd say something that sets us apart, obviously, is the whole industrial side of it, with Vintner's Vault and having, the reason the winery was set up was to be more of a showcase type of area for people to be able to see how everything works. We've got all this wonderful equipment. We do bring in custom crush clients, which I'm sure you touched on a little bit. Also, not to toot my own horn, but I also have a beautiful garden in the back that I'm offering fresh produce for people. We've got chickens in the back now. We'll be offering fresh eggs, which is really fun. But what I do want to do as well in the future is kind of use that and do almost pairing, like baskets for people, that people can come and pick up. This wine pairs well with these, the produce that we offer, that kind of thing. Also, I just think it's really interesting the way we do have our labels, which are really cool. All the stuff that we do with the musical instruments. A lot of people are interested in that. I also have a very weird musical background myself, which is what enticed me to also come here. I think that would be kind of what our outstanding thing is we are a little bit different. We're not as big as the rest of the people, but, we do enjoy what we're doing. We're all passionate about what we do. And so that's kind of what I think is a little bit of our draw is, we're passionate. We love having people in here and we're really cool about telling the story and making people feel, a little more educated. We want to teach people, the whole, like I mentioned earlier, the whole process of, how it all happens. Like we like to do that. We love to give tours. We love to show people the whole process of everything. So yeah, I'd say that's what our kind of draw is. So yeah.
I do want to piggyback on that real quick. You did say, or you made a comment about educating people.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I really strive for anytime I'm in the tasting room.
Absolutely.
That, again, you get, in Texas in general, you don't get Cabernets and Merlots and Sauv Blancs and Chardonnays that often. So we get a lot of people that come in and say, oh, I like Zinfandel, or I like a white Zin, or I like super oaky Chardonnay. It's like, okay, we can cater to some of that. Mm-hmm. But the average Texas winery, they don't have those kind of wines. Mm-hmm. And so I like to educate people and say, if you like Sauv Blanc for X, Y, or Z, try this wine because it has X, Y, or Z.
Right.
Things like that. I would definitely want to make it a point where any customers we get, we want to make sure that they understand like why we have the wines we have and what is similar to the wines that they already know. So that way they're just not being served the wine. It's like, oh, try this. Oh, try this. Like It's not car salesman kind of mentality.
Yeah.
I definitely want someone to learn something about wine, whether it's why they enjoy wine for a particular reason, or they understand what their palate is like and how to apply that next time they go to a Spec's or a Total Wine, or even to another winery.
We want to make people educated, but also feel comfortable with what they're drinking.
Exactly.
You don't want to push things that people don't like, and that's a great point. We do want to be educational, but also here's what we think you might be comfortable with. If you're not, we've got another thing for you to try kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of I feel like both of us are kind of that way as well.
Yeah, we're not going to talk down to you just because your favorite wine is a Kim Crawford Sauv Blanc. Yeah. Like, we understand that. It's like, all right, let's have a little bit of a learning experience here. Let's try this wine,
and, have a little fun with it too. So, I mean, we have fun with what we do. So we want to share that with other people as well. So.
We're talking about the differences. Why do I like the way I like?
Yeah, absolutely.
You like that cheap Sauv Blanc? Okay, great.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah,
love it.
It's just some people just haven't had a chance to really, discover what wine is like. It's like, it's whenever you go to a supermarket, Total Wine, Specs, even the wine section at Walmart, mm-hmm. Target, it can be very overwhelming and intimidating. And so some people, they just happen to get one bottle and they're like, you know what, that one's fine, mm-hmm. and that's just their default. They go in,
I know I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I know I like this one Franzia. I'm going to stick with this one Franzia. It's like, okay, that's totally fine. And I get that. Trust me. It's like the same reason why some people just stick with Jack Daniels or Jim Payne, whatever. It's like they don't want to venture out. And knowing what those wines are like, I would always ask people, like, do you like rosés? You know, this is what this kind of wine is. And for a while, we had a Viognier, 2021 vintage Viognier that was part of that tasting. And it kind of leaned in that Chardonnay realm. It was a little bit oxidized. It had some barrel age on it, a little leesy, but it wasn't buttery. Okay. And so I had this mother-daughter duo come in, and I got to this Viognier and asked them, all right, what do y'all think about Chardonnay? Mother loved Chardonnay. Daughter hated Chardonnay. And so I asked them, what do you love about Chardonnay and what do you hate about Chardonnay? And the mom says she liked Chardonnay because it wasn't nearly as acidic as like a Sauv Blanc, Chenin Blanc, Pinot Gris, anything along those lines. And it was a little more fuller bodied. And the daughter said she did not like the oaky or butteriness aspect of a Chardonnay. And so I told them, like, this wine is kind of in this middle realm. So it's a little bit more fuller body. It's not nearly as acidic, but it's not oaky or buttery. And sure enough, both of them loved it, including the daughter who said she hated Chardonnay. Mm-hmm. So it's all about qualifying them. If you figure out why they like wines, whether it's a white wine drinker who hates reds and you figure out why they hate reds, or a red wine drinker hating whites and why they hate whites, or why they hate Chardonnays or Temps or whatever it is, you qualify them on this next wine and kind of give them that heads up. Because, you know, I'm sure we've all had a Pinot Noir or a Cab that we just didn't necessarily like, or super sweet Riesling that may have been like just straight up sugar.
Do not talk shit about my Rieslings. We should do that. I am a big Riesling fan.
Long story short, just qualify them.
Yes.
Especially with all the different types of wines that we're growing in Texas, like just qualifying. You're not going to find a Pinot Gris.
Yeah.
You know, you might find a Pinot Grigio. If not, let's try Vermentino. Let's try Trebbiano, Albarino, Orento.
Yeah.
Instead of Tempranillo, maybe Graciano. Instead of Pinot Noir, maybe a Montepulciano.
Yeah.
Instead of Cab, Petit Verdot. Like, there's plenty of options. It's just qualifying people, and because they don't know any better. A lot of people still think wine is the same grape. It's just different flavors they add to it, and that makes it Cabernet. That makes it Chardonnay. It's like, no, there's 10,000 species. They're like, what?
Yeah, and I'd say that's probably one of the bigger questions that we get when we have people who come and taste. Like, so what is like the Cabernet Sauvignon for the Cabernet Franc, and it's two different grapes. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like every wine is a different grape varietal, which I kind of knew before I got here, but not the extent of what it was, which is really interesting. You know, it really is an interesting thing. And when you open people's minds to that, they're like, oh, so the quote unquote tasting notes that you're telling me, you guys aren't adding those things to it. Like, it's just what the grape itself is producing, you know? And I'm like,
you guys, where are you guys getting the blackberries from? Like, one of those yourself? Like, no. Just have an open mind with Texas wine. We're still figuring out what grows well here. We're still figuring out how to make it the best way it can. And we're not stuck to a pigeonhole, or we're not pigeonholed down to a specific style. So you can have Cabernet that all came from the same vineyard. You can have 4 different winemakers make them 4 entirely different styles. So that's a big thing.
It's also come a long way from where it was, which is, I don't think people give Texas wine a chance if they're not from here, you know, and Texas got this, you know, label of they don't know what they're doing. It's not good wine. And no, we have come a long way, and people have really started to, you know, like be more quality than quantity, which I feel like that's kind of how Texas started, was quantity and just, hey, we have grapes, we're producing. And now people are really paying attention to what they're doing and the way they're doing it. And it's great. I mean, I see a difference in from 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. It's just really, we're bringing it up a notch.
So what Texas is doing with wine is music to my ears, and Horn Winery is helping to increase that quality. It's a unique location that you can taste great wines there, as well as their, of course, line of spirits. It also seems like in many groups that go visit a winery, there are always some that like wine, but some that are more interested in the spirits. So this type of location actually brings the best of both worlds to the table and can satisfy any group that goes to visit. So I loved hearing about some of their plans for the location. That idea that Robin brought to the table of building a garden and providing fresh eggs from the chickens and produce from their garden matched with specific wines that they sell is, to me, a brilliant idea, in my opinion. I mean, such a great way to have your meals at home be not only farm to table, but grape to glass as well. Now, as always, when you decide to make a visit, first check out their website. It's www.hornwinery.com. You'll find info on their Azio distilling line there as well as a place to make reservations for tastings. You can also buy their wine from their website. They even have a cool tab with recipes that you can make that pair well with many of their wines. So don't forget, when you go to see them, make sure to tell them you heard about them on this podcast, Texas Under Vine. So for this episode, Brad won me over with that Tempranillo as it was so luscious and smooth. It really captivated my palate, and so that's the bottle I had to buy and bring home for my wine library for this episode. As all good musical pieces come to a crescendo and then fade away, it's time for me to move along to another fun wine destination to bring you the next episode. Before I depart, however, if you are enjoying the show, if you will consider please becoming a Patreon subscriber, you can go to my website, texasundervine.com, and click the Become a Patron link at the top of the page. For just a few dollars a month, you can get access to behind-the-scenes content like photos and videos at the locations. Plus, it really helps me cover my travel costs and the hosting costs for the podcast to help bring the show to you. If not, would you at least share the show with one of your wine-loving friends? I know there are more out there who would really enjoy hearing this kind of content and benefit from it when they get ready to plan their own wine tours. Well, my time is up, so don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow my socials to be notified whenever the next episode is posted. And as always, until next time, happy trails and bottoms up, y'all. Thanks for listening to Texas Under Vine. We strive to provide you with the best information about wine businesses all over Texas. Be sure to check out our website at texasundervine.com and follow us on our socials at Texas Under Vine to stay up on all the upcoming episodes. Please email us with any suggestions or feedback. Also, contact us if you're interested in donating, sponsoring, or advertising on the podcast, just to help us cover our expenses and bring even more great info to you in future episodes. Above all, travel safely, and most especially, drink responsibly. Don't forget to also check out the Texas Wine Lover website and their phone app. If you want to plan a trip to the wine destination I talked about in this episode, the site for Texas Wine Lover and their phone app that you can download will really help you organize a trip so you can go see them. You can check out all of the goodness that I got to experience while I was there. But as you're planning your trip, while you're on their website or their app, you can also find out things like accommodations, restaurants, and even some fun events and things that are going on at the wineries. And maybe even find one that you want to experience as part of your wine trip that you never even expected. So check them out. Again, it's txwinelover.com.